I'm glad to see that at least one studio has the balls to release a horror film around this time of year. What I mean is, for the last month, all I've seen come into our theater is chick flicks. We've gotten Leap Year, When in Rome, Dear John, Valentine's Day. I'm just swarmed by chick flicks at the moment. I can't deal with this anymore. So I went into this movie really hoping it would be good. So was this movie worth the wait? I'll explain in a moment. First, let me give you all a brief synopsis of the plot. You have this character, played by Benicio del Toro, and he finds out one day that his brother has gone missing in his home in England. So he rushes home, only to find that his brother is dead. He and his father, played by Anthony Hopkins, and his brother's fiancée, played by Emily Blunt, start making funeral arrangements, and they slowly try to discover what happened to his brother, because he was found in a ditch on the side of the road, and his body had just been mauled beyond all recognition. As the story progresses, we come to find out that this brother was killed by a werewolf. And as Benicio del Toro's character is searching for this werewolf, of course he's bitten. So now, he of course will turn into one at the next full moon, because he's now been bitten. So the rest of the movie follows Benicio del Toro trying to convince people that he either is or isn't a Wolfman, and of course on every full moon he changes and beats the living hell out of people. So what can be said about this Wolfman? As you all know, I'm not the biggest fan of horror film remakes. Typically, I prefer to leave the original film as it was, and it doesn't need to be remade. Was this a pretty good remake? I like to think so. The directors of this film at least managed to create a very decent, creepy atmosphere for this movie, and I did like that. Also, a good portion of the cast of this movie did a very good job. I was very impressed by Hugo Weaving, who plays an inspector from Scotland Yards, and I liked him for the majority of the movie, even though he really isn't in there for that long. Also, the majority of the rest of the cast, along with Anthony Hopkins and Emily Blunt, do a very good job. However, it's the main role that kind of confuses me. Benicio del Toro. He was good in this, but he doesn't strike me as a person who would be Wolfman material. As soon as his character is bitten by this beast, he almost acts blasé about it for a while. Dude, you were just bitten by a werewolf! Why are you so calm? And it isn't until later in the movie that he finally starts realizing what the hell's going on and starts freaking out about it. Now, I don't know if that's bad directing or that's bad acting, but somewhere along the line, someone got confused with this character's motivations. And this is not a knock on Benicio del Toro. I think he is a very good actor. I just think he was possibly miscast for this movie. Now, I don't know who else you would have cast for this movie, and I do think he did a good job with the part. I was just taken away every time he was transforming into the Wolfman. I just kept saying to myself, why is this guy so blasé about this? It's almost as though he doesn't care that he's changing into the Wolfman. Now, if there is one thing this movie got right, was the very bloody and gory action scenes, and I loved them. However, they're few and far between. When those action scenes come up, and you see the Wolfman kicking ass and tearing around towns, you love it. It's really fun to watch. However, there's maybe only 3 or 4 of those scenes throughout the whole movie, and they're probably only about 5 minutes long. So the rest of this movie is just people talking about the Wolfman, and referencing the Wolfman, and saying what they should do to kill the Wolfman. We don't want to talk about the Wolfman, we want to see the Wolfman! I really wish there had just been a few more moments of the Wolfman going around and tearing people apart, because when that's going on, the audience loved the movie. But sadly, those moments are few and far between. So, final rating. This isn't the worst horror film remake I've seen recently. I've seen far worse, but this isn't great either. If anything, it's a pretty good remake of a classic horror film. And again, I did like the cast of this movie, and while the action was going on, the movie was really enjoyable. But sadly, those action scenes were too few and far between. However, in a season with a ton of chick flicks, I think if you're a guy like me who likes horror films, you'll probably have a good time with this. So I'm going to give Wolfman 3 stars. It's not the most phenomenal horror film to come out, and in a couple years this movie may be forgotten. But you know what? If you can get past a couple of the odd performances by characters, and if you can get past some of the dull chatter going on, you may enjoy this. But if there is one thing that would have actually made me enjoy this film a little bit more, it would have been the release date of this movie. I know it's odd to reference a release date for a movie, but think about this for a moment. When this movie was released, there was not a full moon in the sky. But how epic would it have been to walk out of any theater and look up and see a full moon above you? I wish the directors and producers had a little bit of forethought on that, because had this movie been released just a couple of weeks from now, when it is a full moon, and people walk out of the theater and see that, I think that would have been the coolest thing to walk out on. Now, maybe that's just me, because I'm a horror film nerd like that, but, you know, if that would have occurred, I would have given props to the movie. So, take care.